The film begins in the 1980 seconds, a time when people were genuinely terrified of bandits because these outlaws would not only rob individuals of their valuable possessions, but also end their lives. Just like a bandit named Parmas does at present, he, along with his accomplice, murders 3 individuals and subsequently steals all their belongings. After finishing their deeds, they come across a location where wooden enclosures were set up and human skulls were hanging in various places. Human skulls were hanging ominously in that place. Before Parmas and his companion could comprehend the situation, an unknown assailant attacked Parmas's companion. There was a human bone affixed to the end of the arrow. Parmas desperately wanted to save his friend, but he tragically died on the spot. Fearing for his own safety, Parmas swiftly fled back to his town. Parmas concealed the stolen goods as his refuge. However, unfortunately for him, the sheriff's assistant had witnessed him doing all of this. He proceeded to inform the sheriff, who was named Haine Muslim, about the entire situation. He expressed his belief that Parmas might be a bandit due to the fact that he was concealing his possessions. The 2 of them resolved that if this was indeed the case, they would apprehend Parmas. Hunt ventured outside with his assistant to where Parmas was seated. They refrained from capturing him immediately. Instead, they took a seat and commenced interrogating him regarding his activities. Observing that Parmas grew increasingly anxious, their suspicions solidified into certainty. Before they could, Parmas rose to his feet and attempted to flee, but to halt his escape, the sheriff discharged his firearm, striking him in the legs from behind, causing him to collapse immediately. He was wounded and fell to the ground. As this entire episode unfolded in full view of everyone outside, all the onlookers understood that Parmas was indeed a thief. At this juncture, we observe a gentleman named John who becomes worried upon witnessing Parmas's injury and is keen to locate a physician in the town to assist him. There was merely a single doctor in this town, and it was depicted that her spouse was also severely injured. She was hurt, her leg was severely wounded, which she was tending to herself. Nevertheless, given the urgency of the situation, she sought consent from her spouse and proceeded to the police station alongside John. Upon their arrival at the police station, they realized that the circumstances were far more dire. Parmas's leg was more severely injured than she had anticipated, and it might require nearly the whole night to address it, and even then, she couldn't predict when he would fully recover. The doctor commenced her work, and the scene transitioned to a boy on the opposite side. He was simply on his way to his farmhouse to undertake some tasks when he unexpectedly heard the thunderous noise of horses galloping. He went to investigate, and the sight before him was rather peculiar. The individual standing before him at that moment did not resemble us in the slightest. Before he could even contemplate or attempt to escape, they apprehended him and ended his life, inflicting severe injuries upon his body in numerous areas. These individuals had, in fact, arrived while in pursuit of Parnas. Cannibal's End.
The morning arrives and we see the sheriff at his home. A rather anxious person comes to his house and informs him that he saw a dead man in the fields and the condition of the body was extremely poor. He mentions that he went to report all this at the police station, but upon arriving there, he found that there was no one present, not even the prisoners. Hearing this, the sheriff was shocked, but he still went first. In the fields, he checked the boy's body. Job was dead, and then he went to the police station where he found that everyone was indeed missing. Upon investigating the police station, he found an arrow that belonged to the same animal tribe, which the sheriff had no knowledge of. However, he knew there was a person in this place who could shed light on this, and that was the professor. Before taking the arrow to the professor, he wanted to visit the doctor's house and give her husband this shocking news. Yes, your brother disappeared from the police station last night. Hearing this, her husband was shocked. In the city, they inform him, "Do not worry, I will find their trail." Distressed, Arthur began to follow the sheriff. They went outside where they met the professor. They showed the professor the arrow, which also alarmed him. The professor knew that this arrow belonged to the cannibal tribe. The professor explained to everyone that the cannibal tribe captures and kills humans to eat them. Whoever goes to them does not return alive, and if such people have taken people from here, it means the entire town is in danger. Libo will eat these people in the market and keep returning to this town for more prey. Hearing this, everyone was frightened. Doctor's husband was only concerned about his wife. He wanted to save her at any cost. Therefore, he decided to join the sheriff on his mission. In this mission, they were going towards the cannibal tribe to save everyone. They mounted their horses. As they traveled, night fell. They were quite exhausted. They decided to sleep there. John had a good idea of how to travel in such conditions, so he placed a vehicle near where people were sleeping at night, so that if anyone approached, the sound of this wire would wake them up. The wire did make noise during the night. but there was nothing there except animals. Their journey remained quite peaceful after this point, and the next morning they resumed their journey. It was observed that the doctor's husband, whose leg was already injured, found his condition worsening. An infection had started and he was in a great deal of pain. Sharif even told him that he could stop his journey there if he wished, but he was not willing to stop and continue traveling with them. They have to stop their journey again as night falls. Something very strange happens to them tonight. Two people start approaching them and Hunt shows them his gun and tells them to stop right there. He says if they have any weapons, they should throw them down. But these people say they don't have any weapons. Despite that, they continued advancing towards them. From behind, John abruptly shot and killed both individuals, and witnessing this, Hunt became furious, believing he had killed innocent people. However, John explained, "On the journey we are undertaking, we cannot afford to take any risks." He was correct as well. When they approached to inspect those two men, they were indeed robbers and possessed weapons. If John had not killed them, they would have killed them. Now, they wish to sleep without tension, but today, perhaps their fortune is simply unfortunate. Once more, bandits launch an attack on them and stealthily pilfer their possessions. They were even attempting to take their horses, but John's horse, which was exceptionally loyal, refused to accompany them. Consequently, those individuals severely injured the unfortunate horse, and when John and the others, who had been rendered unconscious by the bandits, were brought to the scene, they were all profoundly shocked. John was deeply saddened to witness the condition of his horse. In that world, he was a friend, a companion, and seeing him in such pain was unbearable for them, so John shot him to end his suffering and pain. Now morning had come, and they had to continue their journey, but without horses, they only had one option, which was to walk. However, the doctor's husband's leg was in very bad condition and he couldn't walk much. Therefore, the rest of the group told him to stay there and gave him painkillers. Now, because Arthur, the husband of the doctor, had remained behind, so as they proceeded with their journey, they left markers constructed with stones so that once he had sufficiently recovered, he could follow their trail and eventually catch up with them. After a relatively brief period, their journey reached its conclusion. They arrived at their intended destination, and upon their arrival, the very first thing they encountered was an animal, which Hunt promptly shot with his firearm. The loud sound of the gunshot attracted the attention of the cannibals to the vicinity, and they commenced their assault using their peculiar weaponry. With these unusual arms, the people were at a loss as to how to defend themselves effectively. Johann sustained serious injuries. John's condition was so dire that he was unable to proceed any further. Consequently, the sheriff and his companion decided to leave John behind, providing him with a firearm for his own protection. It was clear that John possessed immense bravery. Even in the face of death, he succeeded in shooting and killing 3 cannibals who approached him, and ultimately, he too succumbed. At this point, Sharif and his companion, who were cleverly on the verge of entering the cave belonging to the cannibal tribe, were apprehended by them and subsequently taken to a prison where the others had also been detained, although there were merely 2 of them present. Sharif inquired, "Where is Permis?" The doctor responded that the cannibals had killed and consumed him, and it is only 2 for us. Upon hearing this, Sharif and everyone else became increasingly anxious. Just then, a cannibal appeared and emitted a peculiar whistle. He assembled everyone in this location and subsequently orchestrated their escape from the prison. 2 of the cannibals seized him by the legs and brutally ripped him apart from the center. This gruesome and horrifying scene left everyone utterly terrified. They were at a complete loss as to what actions to take next. Nevertheless, Sharif remained hopeful that the doctor's husband, who had accompanied them, would undoubtedly arrive to rescue them. The doctor inquired, "Where is he at this moment?" To which Sharif responded that he was indeed on his way with us to save you. But his leg wound had worsened considerably. He began to feel pain, so we left him on the way. Hearing this, the doctor became furious and started shouting at them. "How could you do this to him? How could you leave him in such a dangerous place?" Sharif explains to her that this is not the time for fighting. This is the time to fight together. Sharif asks the doctor how many cannibals are here, and the doctor informs him that there are between 15 to 12 cannibals. Now, because we had already seen that, and they had previously eliminated 3 cannibals outside, leaving approximately 12 still present here. In order to liberate themselves from this location, the group formulated a strategic plan. Sharif possessed some wine, into which they discreetly mixed a substance, and they commenced to quarrel amongst themselves over it. Observing this, the cannibals assumed it must be something of significant value, so they seized it and consumed it. As soon as these cannibals drank the wine, all 3 of them perished, and Sharif's plan was triumphant. The scene transitions. Now we shift our focus to Arthur. It is stated that he somehow successfully managed to reach the cavern of this cannibal tribe. As soon as 2 of the cannibals spotted him, they initiated an attack against him, but before they could succeed, Arthur swiftly shot and eliminated them both. Subsequently, he dragged himself towards their location and observed that they possessed a peculiar whistle around their necks, which they utilized to summon their other companions. He retains this individual's whistle for his own use, which draws the organics present here, and he proceeds to shoot them as well. There were a considerable number of these. Ayada had not met his demise. Now, merely 451 cannibals remained, whom these individuals were compelled to combat. We wish to depict this scenario within the cabin, where the leader of the cannibals discovered that Sharif had orchestrated a scheme and eliminated 3 of their members by administering poison wine to them. In order to exact his vengeance, he drags Sharif outside. He ruthlessly slices into his abdomen and inserts their bottle into his stomach. Before he can inflict any further harm upon him, a gunshot resonates from the exterior. A sound was heard. This gunshot was actually not Arthur. The cannibal had been killed, and all the cannibals went out of the cave to see, except for one. This remaining cannibal placed his foot on Hunt's neck, and as Hunt tried to show resistance, he grabbed his foot, pulling him down and then coming over him to kill him. The cannibal who had gone outside was now killed by Arthur, after which Arthur dragged himself into the cave. He met Sharif there and informed him about how many cannibals he had killed. Sharif estimated that only 3 cannibals were left now, and neither was he himself. Seems only 3 cannibals are left, and I'm not myself too. I'm going to do it. You all run away from here and I'll kill these 3 cannibals from behind. It was a very emotional scene. They didn't want to leave their wedding but had no choice. After which the 3 of them started to escape from there. They got quite far from the cafe and then heard the sound of 3 gunshots, which meant that the sheriff had also killed the remaining 3 cannibals. It is shown that in the end, the sheriff himself died after taking the last position and all the cannibals were eliminated. Only these 3 remaining survivors were left, who courageously liberated the rest of their town from the menace posed by the cannibals. And with that, the film concludes here.